So for this job, you're going to need some Q-tips, a greasy rag, a Phillips screwdriver, a 10mm and 11mm wrench, precision oil, precision grease, precision degreaser for those extra old dirty reels, a little brush, and a small pair of needle nose pliers will come in handy. Safety first.
Safety first.
You never know what little springs could fling right into your eyeball. This video will likely roughly apply to whatever reel you have, spinning reel that is. We're going to be specific about the models we're using, but most of this will apply to most reels like the one you have. The reel I'm going to be taking apart in this video is the Diawa BG2500 size. What I suggest you do is lay the items out in the order that you have removed them from the reel on the table. That way when you're putting it back together, all you have to do is work backwards. You'll see us do that, follow along.
But I guess we're going to start with taking this off.
That's right. We're gonna
just loosen the drag.
Remove the spool.
Okay.
Keep going until the spool comes off. You can actually take a Q-tip, run it inside there.
Oh, okay.
Do that
so
now.
That'll just keep... And so
there are springs in here, so be careful not to bend them, and they shouldn't come out, but just be careful. Anytime you're working around anything, springs, anything like that. Okay, once you got that cleaned up, set it aside. After that, you're going to do the same thing with the top of the reel here after you've removed the spool. Get any gunk and dirt out. Okay, this next part is the part that kind of stumps me sometimes. I don't think you need to remove these gears. And I've got a little bearing there. You may or may not, but there's spacers there as well. What we're going to do is loosen this nut right here. We're going to have to be careful with the nut here because this is brass and we're using stainless steel tools. Brass is a soft metal. You have to be gentle with it. On a right-handed reel, it's lefty-tighty, righty-loosey, and on a left-handed reel, it is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Mine's too big, truthfully, for any of the wrenches that I have, so I've got these pliers here that will have to do for me, and if you need them, you can use them. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. With this Daiwa reel, there's a little screw here underneath the nut. You want to remove that next. So for this reel, I had to get a precision screwdriver. You may need that if you don't have it. And it's the Phillips bit.
Cool, cool.
Yep, exactly. Oh, jeez. Oh, geez. Okay, so the gear and these bearings and these washers did pop off here. So I'm going to clean them and then set them out here. Again, just setting aside the pieces in the order that they were removed, cleaning them as I'm removing them. So you want to clean the top of the body here. Don't worry too much about the shaft because you're going to disassemble that and clean it separately. You want to clean the rotor here as well, bottom and top. Get all the nooks and crannies that you can. Set it aside. Okay, so what we're going to do is remove the handle. There's a few different ways to do that. Mine has a cap on one side, and I have to unscrew it from the other side.
Oops.
Oh, okay, careful. Little O-ring there that just popped off. You want to keep that where it belongs, right there. Swipe these parts down so you don't get any of the dust and stuff that's on here inside the reel when you open it up. So once you've done that, you're going to remove the 3 screws from the body. Check both sides depending on what side your reel is on. You'll find those screws. These are holding the case together. So you want to unscrew all of them. Take note of the position they're in. So orient the reel upright on the table. And I'm going to position these screws on the table in the order that they present on the body of the reel. On the BG, there's another screw at the back here for this plastic plate. It helps kind of hold it all together. You want to take that out as well. So I think I should be able to remove this. Oh, yep, there we go. So that's going to come right off. Flip that over. And we're going to clean the inside of it. There's a bit of grease in there. So I'm going to use a bit of degreaser. There are 2 screws on the front of the body here. I'm going to remove these screws on the front of the body here. Ooh. Jeez, look at that. That looks fancy. Would you look at that? This assembly here appears to come out. I'm going to keep this together for now. This looks like the bearing, or a bearing. I'm going to keep that together for now. I'm also just going to clean this plate here quickly and then set it to the side. Use your Q-tip, get inside the nooks and crannies. As I'm going to have to remove these screws here. This is going to come out. Really?
No.
Okay, so the pinion gear comes out. Got this washer on top. This bearing underneath. And another washer on top of that. This pinion gear is covered in grease, so we're going to clean that off. Make sure you get right in there with a little brush in between those teeth. Get all the dirt and grime out. Also keep in mind the pinion gear was oriented with the larger, thicker thread at the bottom. So all of these other pieces will stack on top of that. Clean the bearing, all the washers. And just for now, I'm actually going to reassemble this, just so I don't forget the order everything goes back on. Put that washer on. Put the bearing on. We can add grease to this later. It's no problem. Okay, I didn't notice this before, but there's these 2 pins here. They seem to want to come out. Ooh, there's lots of grease on that one. That's going to allow me to remove... Okay, this is... I'm going to have to remember how this goes back. That pin comes out. Take note of this S-shaped groove. It lines up with this, I don't know, I'll call it a nipple on the gear below it. It would normally sit like this. Oh my goodness, be careful. Okay, these 2 pins here I'm going to clean as well. They came out first, so they're going to sit above the shaft there. Underneath the handle that you've removed earlier, this piece here, there is a tiny, tiny, tiny little retainer clip in there. It needs to be removed. So you're going to have to get some sort of tool to pick that retainer clip off. It's going to spring with some vigorous action. So cover it. So I'm going to take this tool and pry the little retaining clip off. Like I said, you want to cover as much of it as you can. This is a pain in the ass. What you want to do is try and get under the corner of one of the edges. Oh, yeah. Yeah, baby. Okay.
You were saying, what do you want to do?
So you want to get right under the corner of one of these angled edges. Nice. It's almost the shape of a star. And you want to pry and lift it up. This is the little piece that I was trying to get out.
Wow, it's a wire.
Yeah. This is a spring clip, a retainer. Now, in theory, I should be able to pull this through, and I can. And then on the back side, there's a bearing there. That should actually pop right through. Careful, you don't want to really actually push on this all that hard. You could damage it. There, yeah. So I'm going to set this aside and clean all these parts. Do not want to lose this spring clip. Tiny little guy. There is a small little brass washer here. I'm going to leave it on that. Oh, it looks like there's a couple actually, very thin ones. But do check them. If there's any dirt or grime underneath. And clean them off. And keep in mind these are very thin, very delicate, so don't bend them while you're cleaning them. Just so they don't get lost. Because that would be horrible. Just in case I haven't said it, you want to clean off this whole main gear. Making sure not to lose any of the small little washers or anything like that might be on it. That is looking pretty good. Clean the bearing. Okay, I'm going to take the body. I got that one last little gear there. I am going to remove that because you've got to clean and re-grease underneath it.
That'd be a great little short. The difference between an expensive reel or a cheap reel and an expensive reel.
Okay, so on the bottom of this gear, you'll see there's this interesting washer. I'm going to clean that off.
It looks like it's got some indents in it, like it's been worn in. Look at it on the one side of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, okay, just flip this over. And this bearing popped out. Oh my gosh. There's a tiny little washer in there. I'm just going to keep that all together. It's so small. So the washer sits in the bottom of that little opening, and then the bearing sits on top of it. Just to put this back together so I don't forget later, I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the bottom of this washer. Just a little bit. Rub it in. Actually, yeah, get on both sides. And stick that right back on there. Now, we just have the body here. I am not going to disassemble the reverse switch. Looks like there's some complicated spring clips in there, and I'm just not sure that is going to make any substantial difference to the gears in the box here. I'm going to just take your Q-tip and clean out all the grease in this cavity here. Oh my gosh, another little tiny bearing right here. Okay, so we're going to start putting this back together. As we do that, any of these little bearings, you can see it in there, I'm going to add a little bit of oil. Just 1 drop of oil for the bearings. They don't need tons. I'm going to put a little bit more grease on the bottom of this washer. Just because I'm going to put that right back there where it goes. Make sure the bearing, if it pops out, it's flush. That should spin smoothly. There is another bearing there, so I'm going to add a drop of oil. I'm going to put the screw back in. Tighten that down. Just make sure that still spins. You don't want to over tighten that. Put that bearing back in. Pretty sure that bearing sits flush with the plastic on the inside of the body there. You want to put a drop of oil and then give it a spin. Okay, so I've got to put the main gear back in. It's going to connect these teeth to this gear. So I'm going to grease these teeth, and I'm going to grease these teeth here. Grease the teeth. You're also going to want to put grease in this groove here. Don't be shy, but don't be too liberal either. Just be perfect. Just perfect with the grease application.
What more can you ask for?
Watch these 2 washers on the bottom here. I'm going to flip that over. Grease the teeth. on the main gear. I'm going to add a little bit more to this inside here. Also these teeth here. That should go in here like so. And it does. Like so. Now, we gotta get that tricky little retainer clip back in there. Getting it back in is probably gonna be even harder than getting it out. Here it is. You might even need two tools for this. So you're gonna have to open it up slightly. So you wanna work that down until it's right back into position. Which I've done there. Well, that wasn't so bad. And in theory, this should not come out. Spin this just a little bit. Distribute that grease evenly. And you want to make sure this nipple is visible. Make sure the nipple is visible, because next we're going to have to put the shaft back in, and in this groove here, where that nipple is going to ride the nipple in the groove. I'm going to put some grease in there. And so you're going to put the shaft up through the, oh no, Okay, that bearing just popped out. Get that back down there where it belongs. You want to line that groove up with that nipple. Should sit right in there, just like so. No, sit. Make sure that bearing is still in place. You take the longer pin of the two, and it looks like there is a chamfered edge on one side. I imagine that's the side that goes through this back plate here. Once you get the longer shaft in there, you're gonna get the shorter shaft in there. So you'll see there's a little groove for it to sit right there and right there. And it's gotta go through the opening on the bottom of the shaft here. Right there. I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on these shafts here. Look up here. Put some grease on this pinion gear. It's going to line up with the main gear, which is already pretty well greased, so probably don't need too much on there. It's going to go on the shaft, slide it down the shaft. Oh yeah, that's smooth, baby. Add your washer. It's going to go all the way down. Sit on top of those teeth at the bottom of the pinion gear. And your bearing. Give this a quick little wipe. Put the bearing on. Slide it down there. Make sure it's flush with the casing. Add a drop of oil. Ben, don't forget to add oil to bearings. I'm going to put this plate back on. Gotta finagle those screws into place. Make sure that plate's lined up properly. Might be a little tricky because they're tiny. As you're doing this, I recommend just give this stuff a little spin. Make sure things are still moving and turning. That feels nice and sturdy. Okay, I've got that plate back on. That's all screwed back together. Okay, so this sleeve sits upright. The bottom is flush with the hole. The top there, it's recessed. You'll see that. That's the top. It'll go, this is the upright orientation or position. And wipe that off. I'm gonna clean all these bearings in here. Okay, and add some oil to each of these little cylinder bearings. And then that sleeve is going to go back down in there. Remember, the recessed part is the top. And then that sits back in here. You'll see there's this little loop that's going to sit over that little nipple there. Make sure this sleeve slides right down. It's got to be lined up properly with the flat sides of that brass shaft, part of the pinion gear. That's going to hold that all in place. Okay, so we're going to put this cap back on. The side with the groove is going to go down, line up the screw holes, and screw it back together. We're going to put the housing cap back on, but before you do, you want to line the outside of it with a bit of grease. That's just going to help keep water out from getting inside of the housing body. Yeah, if you spin the pinion gear, that's all turning properly still. So next we're going to put the cover plate on the back and screw that together. If you're right-handed reel, your handle goes on the right side. If you're left-handed reel, your handle goes on the left side. The cap's going to go back on there. All the way down. That O-ring, you want to slide it down. Oh, it actually sits right on top there, not to get water in. Take your time, don't cross thread. When you're putting the handle back on, counterclockwise on the left side, clockwise on the right side. Spin that till it's relatively snug. You should see the pinion gear turning and your main shaft moving up and down. Okay, we're going to put the rotor back on. That's going to line up a certain way with the flat side of that pinion gear. I'm going to put this nut on first. Very important you don't over tighten this brass nut here. So you want to hand tighten this as much as you possibly can. And so what you're going to have to do is this tiny little screw here is going to hold that nut in place. You have to tighten this just enough so that the flat edge is sitting where that screw is going to be. The little screw is going to go right back in there. Using the precision screwdriver again. Okay. Then you put this clip gear on first. The red washer, clear washer, bearing. Last thing we're going to do is take the drag apart, clean the washers, re-grease if it needs it. So this reel's got a big retainer clip here right on top and lots of grease on mine anyways, so clean that grease out. Clean the inside of that spool where the drag knob was. I'm going to get that retainer clip out. So what I suggest you do is put your fingers over half of the opening. Pop it out with your little screwdriver. Careful that it doesn't go flying. Okay, carefully work that clip out. Then disassembly should start to come out one washer at a time. So as you do that, you're going to clean them. Oh, there's actually carbon fiber on the bottom of that. And it looks like there is the tiniest bit of oil on that. So it actually looks like everything has oil in it here, even the carbon fiber discs, which is very interesting. So that just means everything gets re-greased when we put it back together. So far anyways. Holy cow. A lot of layers to this. And then put it all back together again. Okay. So, we're going to clean in there with a Q-tip. Okay, so we're going to put the drag washers back together in the same order that they were removed, putting a very thin layer of grease in between each layer. Grease. Grease. Give the retainer clip a little wipe down. Make sure you don't bend it. It needs to keep its original shape. This might be tricky. Just be patient with it and work it into place. Okay, got that clip in place. There was more grease there. This, you're gonna have to find, kind of wiggle it till it falls right down where it's supposed to be. That's all the way down. Put your cap back on. And there you have it. Oh my goodness. Would you look at that? Back
Nice.
Together. That's the BG2500 by Daiwa, taken apart, cleaned up, put back together. If you enjoyed that, let us know. If you have any questions while you're putting this thing back together, if you have any problems, let me know in the comments. I will try to get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching. Check out this video right here.